Hi everyone, it's Tarrant.
And Stella here from Meeple University on the Dice Tower. Thanks for joining us.
Today we'll be teaching you how to play Survival of the Fattest, game designed by Lee Smith and published by Dirty Rascal Games. We are using a prototype copy here of the game, and so the rules and components may not be final.
Let's get to the table.
In Survival of the Fattest, players are critters, getting ready throughout the year ahead of hibernation in winter. Players must make their way out to forage valuable foods and complete recipes from the market. And the player who's earned the most points by the end of autumn will win the game. To set up, each player takes a player board and then chooses a critter, taking either its standee or mini. Then take your starting cards. Your critter's card, flip to the side which does not say the word bonus under ability, and then the 3 trick cards showing your critter, and forage cards numbered from 1 to 7. These 10 cards are shuffled into a face-down deck, which goes on your deck slot. Lay out the main board and place the round marker on the first round of spring. Shuffle up all of the food and recipe cards into separate stacks. Be careful, the food cards have the same back as the player's starting deck of 10, and make sure you haven't included any trick cards or forage cards from the unused characters. Split the food deck approximately into quarters and then place 1 on Pebblebrook, 1 on Greenvale, 1 on Pinecrest Ridge, and 1 at the trading post. Deal 4 cards face up from the trading post deck. Place the recipes at the market, but don't flip any face up for now. Instead, each player draws 2 recipes, looks at them, chooses one to slide face up into this area at the top of your board called your reserved recipes, and then returns the other face up to the market. Once all players are done, fill up any empty slots from the deck. Finally, place your standee or mini on your stash, and then draw a starting hand of 5 cards from your deck, which you keep secret from the other players. You're now ready to play. Survival of the Fattest plays in 12 rounds, and each round plays in 3 main phases: determine turn order, actions, and foraging. You'll then set up for the next round, and in most seasons this will be by discarding and drawing, but at the end of the first 2 seasons there'll be a full reset. After autumn is complete, you'll go to final scoring. First is determine turn order, and here each player reveals and announces the highest numbered forage card in their hand. So here it would be 6. Whoever announces the highest number is first player for this round, and play will continue clockwise from that player. If there's a tie, players then announce the second highest forage number, and so on until the tie is broken. If the leading players have all identical forage cards, then whoever is the largest critter, based on this chart, breaks the tie. Then comes the actions phase. This is resolved in turns and in turn order, and on a player's turn, a player will resolve 3 steps in the following order. First, recycle, then play trick cards, then choose a location. The first 2 steps are optional, while the third is mandatory, and a player will resolve all 3 steps before play passes to the next player. First is recycle, and this can be a way of getting the cards you want out of your deck if you didn't draw the cards you want in your hand. To recycle, first discard 2 or more cards from your hand. Then draw a number of cards from your deck equal to 1 fewer than the number of cards you discarded. As such, you'll have reduced the number of cards in your hand, but you've got a better chance of having the combination you want. You can only recycle once per turn. If you go to draw a card during a recycle or any other time and your deck is empty, then shuffle your discard pile into a new deck, and then continue drawing. Each player has their own personal deck and personal discard pile. After recycling, you may play 1 or more trick cards from your hand, and that's any card showing the word trick in the corner. Simply take the card and discard it, and resolve its effect. Next, you must move your standee to one of the 6 locations in the game, and you cannot stay in your current location, so you'll have 5 options available. The first location is the stash, which is located on your player board, and the other 5 are on the main board: Pebblebrook, Greenvale, Pinecrest Ridge, the trading post, and the market. Multiple players may occupy the same location. If you visit Pebblebrook, Greenvale, or Pinecrest Ridge, your turn is over. These are resolved in the foraging phase of the round. For the other 3 locations, resolve the effect immediately. For your stash, the action is to take any number of food or trap cards out of your hand and to put them face down into your stash. You'll be able to complete recipes with these at the end of each season. At the trading post, you have 2 options. You may either take a face-up card from the trading post and add it to your hand, replacing it with a food card from your hand. Or you may take the top card blindly from the trading post deck and put it face up into your discard pile. Finally, at the market, you also have 2 options. Firstly, you can choose one of the face-up recipes and reserve it, taking it from the display, and putting it in an empty reserved slot above your player board. If you have no space for your new reserved recipe, then you must discard one that you already have to the bottom of the market deck. Your other option when you visit the market is to complete one of the face-up orders. To do this, you must presently be holding food cards in your hand which match the requirements of the recipe you wish to complete. Take those foods and discard them to the bottom of the trading post deck. Then take the recipe card and slide it into a bonus slot underneath your board like so. If all of your bonus slots are full, then move one of the cards face down into your completed recipes stack before placing the card. Through this, we start to see the 2 ways that you can complete recipes in the game, either by reserving them or completing them straight from the market. When you reserve recipes, you keep them above your board and ultimately have the chance to complete them as a free action with food cards from your stash at the end of each season. This has the benefit of giving you a bit more time to get the right food into your stash so that you can complete them. And the number of points you gain for completing a recipe in this way is often higher than the number you gain for completing from the market. Completing straight from the market means you have to have the right food in your hand at the right time, and you often get 1 fewer point. But you get a market bonus from that card. This can be a powerful, immediate or ongoing effect which may make it worth your while to complete recipes in this way. There's also some that give you an endgame scoring objective to target. Once you've finished your actions phase, replenish any empty gaps left in the trading post or the market from your trick or location actions. Play them passes to the next player clockwise. After all actions are finished, you'll go to the foraging phase, and at each of the 3 foraging locations, if anyone has sent their critter there, then you'll resolve that location. Here, players can hunt for a good supply of food, or they may encounter traps. Resolve each location in the following way. Firstly, in turn order, each player in a location plays any number of forage cards from hand face up into that area. At this stage, the numbers written on the forage cards does not matter. Only the total number of cards played. Now determine the priority order for this forage, and the player with the top priority will be whoever played the most forage cards. Second priority will be second most cards, and so on down to whoever played the fewest cards. If tied, the larger critter goes higher in priority. Now draw and reveal a number of cards from that deck equal to the number of forage cards played. These cards may be a mix of food and traps. Then in priority order, you will draft these cards until each player has taken as many cards as the number of forage cards they played. When it's your turn to draft, if there is at least 1 trap face up among the forageable cards, then you must take the trap unless there is a player in lower priority order who has not yet taken a trap in this forage. It goes without saying that traps are bad and you want to avoid them if you can. So in this forage, cards would be taken as follows. First, Old Grizz does not have to take a trap because the opponent has lower priority and has not yet taken a trap. Therefore, Old Grizz will take a food and will take the wild fruit because this can be spent as other foods and is clearly the most valuable. The Fox must now take a trap because there's no player of lower priority. Now it's Old Grizz's turn again, and this time he must take the trap because now there isn't a lower priority player who doesn't have a trap. Only food remains, and so the players now go back and forward taking the food they want until each has cards equal to the number of forages played. Each player now puts both their played forage cards and their forage food and traps into their discard piles. If you forage alone, you go through the same process, but with no other players there, you automatically have top priority. Simply play a number of forage cards and then draw a number of cards from that deck. But be warned, there's no one else there to suffer the traps if any are drawn. Once all foraging is resolved, the round is over, and in a normal round you'll do the discard and draw phase. Each player may optionally discard any number of non-trap cards from hand and then draw up to hand limit. This is usually 5 but can be increased with some market bonuses. As before, if you go to draw and your deck is empty, then shuffle your discard pile before continuing to draw up to your hand limit. Your minis remain in the locations you chose last round. Remember that you can't visit the same location on consecutive turns. As just mentioned, you're not allowed to discard traps from your hand during the discard and draw phase, and traps have no effect. Essentially, they just choke up your hand with useless cards. There are only 3 ways for you to deal with a trap. The first is simply to leave it in your hand and accept that you effectively have a hand limit reduced by 1. The second is that you can recycle a trap as part of the recycle effect. This likewise is going to mean that you'll have 1 fewer card in your hand, but only for the round you recycled in. The third option is to stash them along with the food when you take the stash action. This has the benefit that it takes them out of your circulating hand for the rest of the game, no longer impacting your hand limit. However, it has the downside that any stashed traps are worth -1 point at the end of the game. If you keep the traps in your deck, they won't be worth this -1 point. At the end of spring or summer, it's time to reset, and instead of doing a simple discard and draw, you'll go through the reset steps. First, recombine your hand, your deck, and your discard pile, shuffling them into a new deck. Now it's time to spend from your stash. You can look through your entire stash and then use anything that's there, or at least any food that's there, to complete recipes or feed your critter, feeding them the foods shown at the bottom of the card. Here, for example, I would spend this acorn to complete this recipe, and I would use 2 honey and a wild to complete Old Grizz's needs for food. Unspent food and traps go back in your stash. Any recipe you complete from your reserved area goes face down into your completed recipes pile. You do not get the market bonus. And if you feed your critter, flip the critter card over to the other side. This gives you a new ongoing bonus ability which you now get in addition to the standard ability that you have from the start of the game. You need only to feed your critter once per game. Spent food goes on top of the trading post deck. Then reset the main board almost as if you're setting up again. You'll shuffle up all of the food and forage cards into a single deck, and then once again split them into 4 roughly even piles at each of the foraging and trading post locations, and deal 4 cards face up to the trading post. Shuffle up all of the face up and face down recipe cards, and then deal with these like you did in setup. Give 2 to each player, and each player chooses 1 to add to their reserved area and places the other in the market, before empty spaces are filled. Then return each player's critter to its stash. After 12 rounds, the game is over. Now discard your hand and deck. These play no part in the end of the game. As at the end of summer, go through your stash and then spend any food you need to to complete any orders that you've reserved, or feed your critter if you're yet to do so. Anything left over, leave that in your stash, as it could count to some of your market bonus scoring. Now it's time to count up the final scores. Firstly, check to make sure you've fed your critter. You must do that during the game. If you never flipped your critter card over, you automatically lose. Then reveal all of your completed recipes from the completed recipes pile and score the points in the top right corner of the card. Any recipes in your market bonus slots, score the points in the bottom left corner, including any which combo with other objectives. Lose a point for each trap card in your stash, and that will be your final score. The player with the highest score wins. And that's how to play Survival of the Fattest.
Check out the project page of Survival of the Fattest. We'll put the link in the description below so you can check it out. If you find this video useful, please help us by hitting that like button and subscribe to the Dice Tower if you haven't already done so.
And if you have any questions, comments or feedback, please leave that in the comments section below.
Thanks for watching and see you next time.